you want to be doing good work, and you're not going to be doing good work if you're just doing the work to keep up. It's very easy in this day and age to get views, clicks, whatever, when you crush somebody. Yeah, I could talk for another hour on this one. Something I think...
Hello, and welcome to Hold the Pass, a podcast where motorsports stories, knowledge, and insights get passed between friends from every corner of the motorsport world. My name is Misha.
And my name is Fatima.
And our guest today has had a front row seat to some of the biggest events in sports. As a reporter for SB Nation, he has covered F1 on track, off track, has interviewed drivers up and down the grid, and has been in the weeds of it for sports storylines, not just in F1, but in so much more. From IndyCar to NFL, baseball, and recently soccer, we're going to get into all of it. Today we're diving into his journey, his craft, and the sporting world at large. Welcome to the show, Mark Schofield.
Good evening, friends. That's quite the introduction. I was saying this before we hit record. Don't build me up too much. See, now I got to live up to the hype here. I mean, I got to bring the A game. So guess I'll stretch, hydrate, crack the knuckles a bit, get ready to go. Try not to be an Alexi Lalas. We were also talking about that as well. For those of you that haven't watched any of the Fox Sports coverage of the World Cup, look for the clips online. I'll just leave it there.
Oh, no, yeah. He's so right, actually, because I've been having a time.
Yeah.
It's been a comedy show.
It's been something.
Honestly.
No, absolutely. And I guess kind of on that, before we jump into the kind of the main meat of the show, how have you been, Mark? How has the sporting world been treating you?
Misha, you and I have had many chats about sort of the sporting world, the media world. It has been a fascinating time in my life. I won't get into the weeds on it too much, but I work for a company which is now named, I guess, RemainCo, Pubco. Okay. See, I work for SB Nation, which is part of Vox Media. And about 4 weeks ago, James Murdoch, the youngest son of Rupert Murdoch, bought half of our company. So Vox Media Podcast Network, New York Magazine, and Vox.com are now going to this other company. And then those of us who are left behind are now apparently working for the lovely RemainCo. That's been an interesting time. As far as the sporting world, it is, let's put it this way. Saturday morning, I got up to watch quali, and then I rolled straight into World Cup / NCAA baseball / World Cup, NCAA baseball, World Cup. So I was basically watching sports from 9 a.m. to about midnight or so Saturday. Oh my gosh. And I get paid to do it, which is kind of silly. I don't know why, but somehow I'm still getting paid to do it. So lucky me, I guess. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, my friends.
Better you get paid to do it versus me, who just spent her entire weekend watching it feels like every sport ever. I watched the Knicks win, which made me so happy. And then I watched every World Cup game I could watch over the weekend. And then I watched Formula One. I mean, I was doing it for free. So,
Right. I mean, well, see, that's the thing about yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. You have Spain, number 2, number 3, wherever they're ranked right now. The FIFA rankings have tweaked a little bit. What are the favorites to win the World Cup against Cabo Verde, a team that third smallest nation ever to qualify for the World Cup, and yet you have a goaltender that's in my age bracket. I will say that. I'm 49. Their keeper's 40. He plays for a tier 2 team in Portugal. He makes 7 saves, and this tiny team in the World Cup for the first time, they draw with Spain. He makes incredible save after. That's the beauty of sports, right? Yes. That's why we watch. That's why those of us that are F1 fans, we will get up at 4 a.m. to watch quali halfway around the world. We will get up we will stay up into the wee hours to watch it when it's in Asia, because we live for these moments. We live for a moment like we saw on Sunday where Lewis Hamilton gets his first Grand Prix win at Ferrari, a day that maybe we didn't think we were ever going to see again, a day that Lewis himself didn't know if he would see again. Mm-hmm. He thought deep down, yes, I could still win races, but look, last year was a rough season for him, and he knew it. He talked about it. He talked about it all season long. He talked about it on Sunday after he won. But these are the moments why we love this stuff, why we live for this stuff, why we watch this stuff in the wee hours in the early morning when the rest of the world is asleep. We crave these moments, these stories, and that's why we love sports.
Oh, absolutely. And don't you worry, we're going to get into that Lewis Hamilton conversation because I'm a delusional Lewis Hamilton fan. And I was like, he's going to win. He's going to take it all. So I was ready. So we will get into that. But before we do all of that, I kind of want to take it all the way back because your story, I think, is quite interesting. From my understanding, you went from being an attorney to making a big career change into sports media. Can you kind of get into what pushed you into taking that leap and when you knew the time was right to do so?
The short and pithy answer is I was a bad lawyer and I was always good at watching sports. But I will say the more serious answer is this. And I remember this moment like it was yesterday. It was around 7 p.m. My wife and I had gotten home from work. My wife is actually a very, very good attorney, which sort of made it a little bit easier for me to make this change. And our routine at this point in our lives was we would pick up our son from daycare, come home, feed him dinner. We'd play with him for like 30 minutes before we had to start the bedtime routine and all that stuff. And she at the time was pregnant with our second child, our daughter, Simone. And we had that 30-minute window, right, where we got to play with Owen before we put him to bath and sleep and then got ready for the next day of being attorneys. And my pregnant wife, Rochelle, is on the floor playing with Owen. And I'm sitting on the couch, guys, staring at my phone because I'm worried about an email that might come for work. I wasn't specifically waiting on a specific email, like I'm going to email you at 7:30 tonight or whatever. It was just the possibility of an email from one of my partners at the firm I was practicing law at had me glued to my phone. And I tell this story all the time. I was looking 6 inches in front of my face on my phone when what really mattered in my life was 6 feet beyond my phone on the floor. And I got to the point where I realized that this wasn't for me. This wasn't the best thing for me. Mentally, wasn't the best thing as a dad, as a husband, all of that stuff. And so I separated from the firm that I was at the time and took a huge risk because I didn't know what I was going to do at the time. I didn't know, I was a good enough lawyer to get a nice little going away package. So I had some time to sort of figure out what I wanted to do next. And it was while I was in that stretch of time that I linked up with some people I knew from a Red Sox message board of all places called Sons of Sam Horn. And we had, in the baseball offseason, written about football. We would write about the NFL draft. We would write about football. We thought, hey, let's start a football website. Let's do this. And I thought, I'll do this while I figure out what I want to do with my life. And then that launched in like September of 14 or something like that. And before I knew it, it took off. And I was getting inquiries about, hey, why don't you come write for us? Then I was in the Washington Post, Bleacher Report, USA Today. And before I knew it, I was getting paid to do this.
Amazing.
And I just came to the decision after talking with my family and my wife that like, hey, maybe something could come of this. Maybe I could actually make this work as a career. And, coming on 4 years now, SB Nation hired me full-time. I was doing it piecemeal, freelance for a couple of different places, mostly at USA Today. SB Nation brought me on full-time. And I was originally hired just to write about the NFL. My original job title is writer NFL. But my editor, Ricky O'Donnell, whom I love, he said, look, you can write about anything you want. And I said, well, what about Formula One? You hired me to get more page views, to get more people reading the site. Summer is usually quiet in the sports media space because there's no NFL. Like the NFL here in the States drives a lot of traffic. I said, what about Formula One? Because like you were saying, Fatima, like if I'm watching something, I always feel compelled to write about it. And I'm watching Formula One during the summer months anyway. Let me write about it. And so I started doing it here and there. And similar to how my career took off, that part of it took off because before I knew it, I had a PR firm that had F1 as a client reach out and say, hey, we love your work. Would you ever want to interview a driver? And I had never even thought about that being an opportunity. And so I said, yeah, sure. And they said, okay, next Tuesday, you and Lando. Sure. Okay. And then before I knew it, I'm on a Zoom much like this, but there's Lando at their factory with his PR people on the other side of a computer screen. And it just sort of took off from there. And so, like Misha said, I've been to races, I've had credentials. If you look very closely in this most recent season of Drive to Survive, you see my left arm. Okay. You don't really see me.
You made the cut.
But in the second episode where they focus on Audi and Alpine, they show Gabby's media session at the Miami race. And you see my left arm because I sat next to him during it.
Amazing.
Like you see my Apple Watch, you see my left arm. And it literally, I wasn't sure it was me. And my wife was like, wait, no, that's your arm. I know it is.
That's honestly so amazing. And hey, you made the cut. You might as well get your IMDb page ready. Get those acting chops ready for F1, the next movie.
I was so like going into this past season of Drive to Survive, I was like, okay, I have to be on it at some point because like in Austin, for example, I was literally inches away from Yuki during his media pen session after the race. And the Netflix cameras were like off to an angle. So it was like, you could see the back of Yuki like straight at me. And I was like trying so hard not to look at the Netflix cameras, like just try to like, be a professional and all that fun stuff. And I was like, okay, this is the year I got to get in, right? Because even the year prior, the race in Austin, that was when you had Lawson come in, to replace Ricardo. And it was Lawson's first race back. And he got elbows out, with Alonso all weekend long. And I remember Horner was sitting right next to me in his media session after the race that Sunday. And then when I saw the title of the episode was Elbows Out, I was like, oh, come on. You're going to see me next to Christian Horner. It's going to be great. And they didn't see me. So at least I got the arm in. Maybe next season I finally sneak in.
It's just going to be like a different body part every single year until you
I'll be like my feet or something. I'll be like showing some trackside view and I'll like walk by and like, those are my sneakers.
That's hilarious.
So literally you'll be like Voltron, like the little parts just coming together.
Maybe by season 15 of Drive to Survive, the full Mark Schofield will have formed on
but to kind of follow up on that. So from my understanding, you were a college quarterback, so you did college football. Yep. So the connection between the NFL and you makes complete sense. Can you kind of describe where the love of, I guess, Formula One really stems from, or was it just like from writing about it?
No, so it's interesting. Like I grew up in the Boston area. If as this episode goes on, you might hear the Boston accent come out. And I was like a Boston team sports guy growing up. My family had Boston Red Sox season tickets growing up. Like you name a big Red Sox game, 75 game 6, 86 World Series. Like somebody in my family was at one of those games. And so my whole life as a kid through say high school, I was very insulated in baseball, football, basketball, hockey, Boston sports. And that was it. I go to college in Connecticut and, get ESPN and a TV in my dorm room, even as a freshman. And I start meeting people from around the world and I start learning about new sports. And I learned about this team called Benetton, which was really confusing to me because that was a sweatshirt my mom wore when I was growing up. Like, how is that a sports team? And this driver, Michael Schumacher, like, it was like new. It was different. And so I started learning about F1. I started learning about NASCAR and motorsports and things like that. And so started learning about European soccer, for example. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of being in college. That was my first sort of introduction to F1 and Benetton and Schumacher and learning about that. So I always say that like Michael got me in. Lewis got me to stay. Like Lewis is really when I really took an interest into Formula One.
Okay.
And because again, like different, new, bold, again, like I say this every time I get to go to races, but I am so lucky that I get to do this and I don't take it for granted. It's why, when I go to races, like I will get there to the track at like 8 a.m. and I'll leave at like 9 p.m. Like I'll be there for like 14 hours just because I don't want to miss a second of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's that passion and like not wanting to miss a second of it. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about us fans, like waking up at 4 a.m. to catch all the sessions, like even practice. And that is something that I think is truly so wonderful about sports fandom in general. I think the passion that we all have for every sport involved is so defining. Something I wanted to talk to you about, and Fatima touched on this, is you have a history as a quarterback.
Yep.
And we see a lot of athletes, once they're done with their professional careers, going into some sort of journalism or presenting or something like that. I wanted to ask a bit about how your previous experience as an athlete has shaped how you approach writing for not just the NFL, but sports in general, whether it's how you analyze the game or speak to players. Or is it more like the lawyer side?
It's interestingly enough, there's a bit of both to it, Misha. I think I will start it this way. I was a very bad quarterback. I have told people before that I was the worst quarterback in all of Division III college football in the years 1997 through 1999. And I can back this up statistically. For example, there is a statistic called adjusted net yards per attempt that takes like touchdowns and interceptions, whatever. I didn't realize until I ran my own numbers it could be a negative number. Like, I was not a good quarterback. Like, yes, I played college football. I scored a touchdown and like I started like whatever, but I wasn't good. And I say that because being a professional athlete is hard. What they do is hard. And the easiest thing, I had a former front office member with both the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. He's become a dear friend of mine. And he learned from former NFL general managers and things like that, and sort of the scouting side when you're scouting players for the draft and writing reports on, draft quarterbacks, draft prospects. This general manager told him, like, the easiest thing you can do is crush somebody. Say they're not good, they're bad, they stink, whatever. The harder thing to do, but the more important thing to do is find what they can do well, talk about what they can do well, ways they can help. Now, maybe in the sort of draft evaluation world, there isn't really something that a player can help your team with. And so you might just have to say that. But I bring that up because what they do is difficult. If driving an F1 car were easy, everybody would do it, I remember I asked, every time I interview a driver, I always ask, what's the hardest thing about being a race car driver? I just interviewed Nick DeVries before the Le Mans and asked him that question. I'll be writing that story up later this week. But I remember when I asked Zach Brown, I've interviewed him a couple of times. I asked him that question because he's obviously been around racing, been a racer. And he said, the hardest thing about being a race car driver is the fact that everybody else drives. Everybody else drives to the grocery store. They drive to work and they think that they can do it. No, you can't. You can't get into an Indy car, a World Endurance Championship car, an F4 car. Elizabeth Blackstock, credit to her, she jumped into an F4 car down in Miami. Awesome. That was awesome to see. But you can't jump into an F1 car and race in Monaco. You can't. Like, you think about the way ESPN, when they had F1 last year, talked about how every blank is 300 feet of darkness. Like, think about that for a second, because that's the speeds they're going at. The G-forces, you can't do what they do. You just can't. Like, and so it's easy at times to sort of fall into that, well, you screwed up, you crashed, you must be bad. No, it's extremely hard to do what they do. I think about when I interviewed Jack Doohan in Miami in 24. He was at the time Alpine's reserve. And I had like an hour with him and it was a great conversation. I asked him what I thought was going to be this like completely innocent, fun throwaway question because, Alpine, they have all the new famous owners, right? Rory McIlroy, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Michael B. Jordan. So I'm like, all right, well, of all the new owners, who are you most excited to meet? And he said, Anthony Joshua, the boxer. And I was like, well, why him? And he's like, well, they're like us. He gets in the ring. He knows one punch, he could end like that. It's just like us. One turn, we miss it, we hit the wall, and it's over. And I wanted to get his mindset on what it's like to do that because that's what we have to do. That's what we face. We have to face the fact that when we get in the car, they've made it safer, but it's not completely safe. But we have to be willing to put it all on the line to be great. And like, how can you turn around and then say like, yeah, this kid's not good at what he does, or these guys aren't good at what they do? And so I always keep that in the back of my mind. Like, to use the quarterback example, I've talked about and I've written about what it's like to be in the huddle, break the huddle, get to the line of scrimmage, everything you have to look at before the play begins as a quarterback. Every cue, every indicator, where the cornerback's eyes are, where the safeties are, what the linebackers are doing. Look at the defensive linemen. Are their hands like can you see the blood in their fingertips? Because that means they might come forward. If you don't, that means they might draw. All the cues, all the things you have to diagnose before the play even begins to make the right decision with the football. And then you have to put the football where you're supposed to put it, make an accurate throw. Oh, and by the way, you have to do that when there are very large people trying to put you in the hospital because they want to hit you that hard. Like, it's not easy. Like, playing in the WNBA, trying to hit a shot over Aja Wilson. Like, it's not easy. What these athletes do is not easy. Now, every time I talk to them, I try to get that out of them. Try to get out of them the fact that, look, what they do is insanely difficult. What they do is risky. And in some cases, it can kill them. But they do it because they're extremely good at it. They do it because they love it. They do it because, yes, in many cases, they're making a lot of money and they live great lives, but it's a short window. Average NFL career is like 3 years. Like average F1 driver career, not everybody's Lewis, not everybody's Fernando. Like you might get the Nick DeVries that get half a season to prove their worth. It's hard. And their stories matter. And so every time I sit down and like type up an interview, I leave myself out of it as much as I can. What they do is hard. What I do is easy. I let them tell their stories.
I think that that's such a really cool perspective and a really amazing perspective. And maybe, again, that does come from your time in your college years. But I also think that as fans, we are there to be entertained. And we, as much as we can say, yeah, I can do it. Trust me, I know I can't. I can't have an F1 car. I can't play basketball to the level of the NBA or the WNBA or soccer, the whole shebang. And I do think that that realization and hearing those stories are so very important to kind of like honestly humanize the athletes because we forget that they're humans.
Yeah. And it's one of the, and Misha, we've talked about this before, right? Like, it's very easy in this day and age to get views, clicks, whatever, when you crush somebody. You know, when you say, oh, you know, how could he miss this shot? You know, how could he throw this interception? But like, I never, like, yes, if you make a couple of bad plays, I'll frame it that way. I'll say like, yeah, you missed a throw, you missed this read. But it's always going to come from that point of view that like, yeah, this is hard. Here's why it happened. Okay. It's not that he's a bad quarterback or something. The person's a bad driver or the person's a bad, you know, soccer player, whatever. It's what they do is hard. And yes, there are ways that they can improve. They can get better, whatever. But I'm not going to sit here and just try to like crush athletes. No, like there are, if that's what people want from the content that they consume, like, sure, there are thousands of places you can get that, but that's not what I've ever wanted to do. Like, as negative as I will be, is like, yeah, you know, that's a bad decision from a quarterback, or, you know, this driver is usually better in qualifying and they made a mistake. And it's really easy in the F1 world because they're so honest. Like a lot of times in football, they will say things like, yeah, I got to look at the film, or I got to look back at that, or I'm not quite sure what the read was. I didn't see him, whatever. F1 drivers they're open books for the most part. Like you talk to a driver in the media pen after a bad quality and they'll tell you, yeah, I didn't have the right feel for the car today. Like I should have been better. I was poor today. You know, like Charles last week basically saying it's hard to support me right now. I get it because I've been bad. Like they're brutally honest because there's really nowhere in that sport to hide, right? In the NFL, you could say like, you're going to look at the film. There's 21 other players on the field. Stopwatch doesn't lie in F1. We all see the telemetry data by the time the race is over. We all watch every single angle of it. We can see the onboards. We know, like, yeah, if you turn the wheel in wrong, we know by the time you come to us in the media session. And if we don't know, we'll see it because the screens are right there. We can see it as we're talking to you. And so they're brutally honest. And, you know, in those moments, I will do things like use their own words and just say, look, you know, Leclerc had a bad qualifying session. Here's what he had to say about it.
That's actually a really good. I used to think they were brutally honest to a fault, but now I'm like, you know what? You're right. We can see everything. So
yeah, I mean,
it's true. Sense.
We see everything and the telemetry data is available. So we know if you lifted before you went into a certain corner, like the answers are there. And so there's really nowhere to hide. They're all trained incredibly well. I mean, you saw it on Drive to Survive, that episode I was talking about. They were sitting down with Gabby before his media session. Like, these are the talking points for the week. So they are very well trained from a media perspective, but they know that they can't lie to us. Like, if they're saying things like, the car was, bad today, but it's like, no, it's like, you lifted before turn 4. We can see the telemetry data. Like, they know they can't get away with stuff like that. And so they are brutally honest, but yeah, it's partly because there's no way they can really hide it.
That's true. Kind of to just turn things around a little bit, and this is really a personal and kind of selfish question for myself.
I'm an open book.
Awesome. Thank you. Because I would like to know something. So as a person who is currently a legal professional myself, so I'm a licensed paralegal, looking to, I guess, break into the motorsport industry as a presenter and a host, what is one piece of advice that you would give that you wish you had when you were changing your career?
I'll give you two things. One that I kind of did have, and I'll frame it accordingly when I do, but I'll give you another one that I wish I did have when I was breaking it. It's hard. Like, you are going to be told more than you ever want to hear that you're wrong. Like, you will write something, you will say something, you will, whatever it is, however you are creating content, whether it's vertical video, whether it's write-in, whether it's podcasting, whatever. Nobody enters the comments to tell you you're right. Nobody enters the DMs to tell you that they loved something you wrote. Nobody, enters the DMs and say, hey, that's a great episode. But they love to do it when they disagree. They love to do it when they think you're wrong. And so you are going to hear more than anything else that you're wrong. And that's something I didn't think about going in, because when I really started this, it was solely NFL breaking down plays because of my experience as a quarterback, right? Like, I can watch an NFL game live, and like Tony Romo does when you watch, games on CBS, I can tell you, oh, there's a formation, there's a motion, that's what coverage they're in, this is where he's going to throw the ball, and it will happen. Because of my background playing the position. And so I thought, I know everything. Well, I don't know everything. And I started to learn that the more I did this, but I would always, like, if you look over here and behind me, I've got books upon books about NFL offenses and college offenses. And I'm always trying to read up to make sure I know what I'm talking about, but it doesn't matter. I could be right, but people will tell me I'm wrong. I could have the right, I think, opinion on a player, and I'll get death threats. Like, you will hear a lot that you're wrong, that you're not good. You have to have, unfortunately, a thick skin. And there's an undercurrent to this, which is this, and it's just an unfortunate fact, but I'm a middle-aged white guy, and I hear stuff like that. Like, I was a dude that's, middle-aged white guy. I'm kind of born on third base, to use a baseball analogy, and doing this in sports, and I still hear that. I have female colleagues that hear much worse all the time. And so it's an unfortunate thing. I hate it. I push back on it whenever I can. But, there are women journalists in this field and women presenters and women content creators that get it much worse than I do. And so it's a sad, unfortunate fact. But yeah, you are going to be told you're wrong. You're going to be told you're not good. You have to trust in yourself, and you have to have a good support structure around you. It's great that you guys are such good friends. That's going to certainly help. I have my family and stuff like that. That certainly helps. Somebody sends me death threats about a quarterback, and I put my phone down and go play catch with my son, and I can forget about it for a bit. So that's the thing that I didn't know that I wish I did. The thing that I did know, whenever I was a litigator, and whenever I was preparing a client, a witness, or somebody for a deposition or for a trial, because I was a civil litigator.
Yeah.
The last piece of advice I would give them in that, whether pre-deposition meeting, pre-trial meeting, whatever, was this. When we're in the room, act like your mom's in the room too. And honestly, that's how I approach every radio spot, TV spot, podcast. I act like my mom's in the chair next to me, and I don't want to embarrass her. And so that's the thing that I sort of pulled from my legal background, how I would prepare witnesses, to what I do now. I always try to approach it like, I want to make my mom proud. I don't want to embarrass her. And so on this show, on every other show I ever do, I act like she's in the room with me. Yeah, I always found that was a pretty good piece of advice.
It is, and I think that it's very applicable to basically every profession. I think it doesn't take a lot of effort to be a decent human being. And as you were saying, Mark, a lot of the time people take the easy route, whether it's writing a negative article or a sensationalized article or leaving the mean comment that they know is going to get a response out of someone. And yeah. I think that it's acting like your mom is in the room is very, very good.
Yeah, and the other thing is, look, this was never told to me directly, but and again, talking to people around the National Football League, right? And again, this is just one sport, one sort of siloed environment. Back when Twitter was where everybody would sort of do their social media posting, what you said about players and teams got to them. And if you then turned around and applied for a job with Team X after you spent the past 6 months destroying their quarterback and their coach, you're not going to get a job.
It's social media, and we can have an entire conversation about social media and motorsports and sports in general and how interesting that space is. But I want to kind of take it back to your career and where you are right now. You cover a lot of sports. You're doing F1, you're doing NFL, MLB, you're doing the World Cup, IndyCar. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch. And each one of them operates on a completely different schedule. How do you balance all of that and the demands?
It's hard at times. Like this past weekend, for example, you had quali at 10 a.m. here in the States. And so, I was up at 8 to finalize the quali blog and get that published. And then you're watching the pre-quali show, and then that ends around 11:15. You get everything done and dusted on that angle. You get the first World Cup game at noon, and then college baseball starts at 2, then another World Cup game at 3, another World Cup game at 6, next college baseball game at 7. There are times when I do feel like I'm sort of glued to the television. A couple of benefits, benefits probably not the right word. I tend to write really quickly, which helps. And that's sort of the background from the law world. One of the more formative events of my legal career was back when I was still in law school, working at Legal Aid one summer, and the attorney I was working for came into my office one morning at 9 a.m. and he was like, yeah, I have a brief due in the Virginia Supreme Court at 4 and I haven't started it yet. Can you write it? And so there I was writing, I see Fatima's eyes. Yeah, I was writing a 30-page brief in one business day. And I still remember we had to this was back before there was electronic filing, because again, I'm old. So we had to file it across town. So he's driving his manual shift Subaru while I'm stapling stuff in the passenger seat. He's going the wrong way down one ways and all this stuff, but we got it there in time. But I've always been able to write quickly, which certainly helps. I will say that there's sort of a drawback to all this, which is I can't just sit down and watch a sporting event anymore. I feel like I have to write something. I have to do something about it. Which is sort of a blessing and a curse, right? Again, very lucky to be able to do what I do. I'm very lucky that I write about sports for a living. I'm very lucky that I can say to my wife, yeah, I have to watch this sports game for work. Although I will say she's already tired of the World Cup and we're still in the first round of group stage matches. It's been a long month ahead, my friends. But I can play the look. I got to work hard and turn on a game. But then if I do, I feel like I got to write about it. But you have to also listen to yourself from a mental health and a physical health standpoint, right? Look, there's a game that kicks off tonight at midnight, Austria and Jordan. I will not be watching it. I'll be in bed. I'll probably have been asleep for a couple of hours, because, you need sleep, you need rest. You have to realize that, look, you can't write about everything. You can't cover everything. You can't chime in on everything. You can't be everything at once. Like you have to sort of carve out some time for yourself, whether it's exercising, whether it's taking walks, podcasts, reading, whatever. Because burnout's a real thing. One of the social media is great because it connects people like us. It allows us opportunities. Like I wouldn't have gotten to where I am were it not for the old Twitter and the opportunities that came up as a result of that. But it's very easy for us to write an article, record a podcast, get done with a little bit of work, open the phone, start scrolling, and start feeling bad because you're seeing all the other great stuff that other people are doing, right? Like I'll write an article during the NFL season. I'll be really happy with it. And I'll open up Blue Sky and I'll see friends of mine that are at ESPN or Yahoo or other great outlets doing great work. And I'm like, oh man, that's really good. I need to go back to work. Like you feel like you're on this hamster wheel of content where you can never create enough to keep up with all the other good stuff. You have to remember you're one person.
That is so true. And I think that's something that Fatima and I have experienced. And we've talked about it a lot just in our own time. Because both of us have done the creator thing and how absolutely exhausting it is. Right, Fatima? Like,
don't even get me started.
It is. It is because, and it's easy to feel like you aren't doing enough. And look, I am somebody that is lucky enough to be getting paid to do this. And I feel that way all the time. I'll see a great clip from your podcast and be like, man, I need to get back in the podcast. I need to do this. I need to do this. Like it's natural, but you're only going to sort of drive yourself crazy if you fall down that rabbit hole. And again, like I said, like I'm guilty of it. Like I was doing it earlier today. I was just trying to take some time to like relax before these World Cup games started. But I was like, oh man, I really should be working. I really should be writing. And yeah, there is that, especially the way that my job is sort of unfolded, where I feel like I have to be working all the time. You can't do that. You want to be doing good work, and you're not going to be doing good work if you're just doing the work to keep up.
Yeah.
Do the stuff that you're passionate about and take some time for yourself when you need to. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And another thing that really struck me that you said is it feels like work when you're watching sports. And I definitely relate to that, having done a bit of journalism as well. But I do kind of want to spin it a bit more on some of the perks of this job. And something that you said at the top of the show is your very first interview was with Lando Norris. Can you talk a bit about how that was? Like, that must have been crazy.
I will say, look, I have been so lucky. Like, the Lando interview was over Zoom. I remember it was my first one, and like I was trying to start this F1 stuff at SB Nation, and so I wanted to do a really good job. I literally put the F1 theme on repeat on the Alexa in my bedroom because I was going to do it in the office that was next to our bedroom for an hour and paced to try to get myself geared up to do it because I was like terrified. And within the first question, Lando like completely put me at ease. Again, they're so well media trained, but like smiled and laughed, and I was like, okay, this will actually work. But I will say, having done so many interviews, like, I mean, I interviewed Pierre Gasly at the Four Seasons in Austin, at the Four Seasons Hotel Bar, like on the outside deck overlooking the river. Like, there's a photo of it from when I did it online. Like, I've gotten to do some extremely, extremely cool things. My most recent was before Nick DeVries was Carlos Sainz Jr. over Zoom. That was the most nervous I think I've ever been. And again, this is after doing like dozens upon dozens because this is Carlos. Yeah. Like I've talked to him in person before, but like his media scrums and stuff. But I don't know, for whatever reason, Carlos had me super nervous. It's they're so good at what they do, both on and off the track. And you know, I do not take it for granted when I'm lucky enough to speak to these athletes, you know, whether it's IndyCar drivers. I learn something every time. Abby Pullen was one of my favorite interviews ever. She was fantastic to talk to. It's no surprise to me that A, she's winning races in GB3, and B, that she's also doing, you know, broadcasting of her own. Like she's incredible. Like she's so much fun. Got a chance to spend some time with her, like even not doing interviews in Miami, and she was just great to talk to. But yeah, as far as jobs go, it beats what I used to do. And I'm certainly blessed and lucky, and I don't take it for granted for a second. And yeah, I get to talk to Lando. I get to talk to Pierre Gasly. I get to pet Leo. I mean, yeah, I get to do stuff that's very, very, very cool.
Mm-hmm. Stop. I'm so jealous. It's my dream to pet Leo. That is the happiest dog I've ever seen.
Okay, so it was Miami in 25, and that was the race where you had the Ferrari radio blow up, and Lewis seemed really, really frustrated, and you were getting the sense that it wasn't going well. And, you know, Fred's having to answer all these questions. But I'm looking in the corner of the Ferrari hospitality because Alexandria is eating pizza on the couch with Leo. And Leo's like jumping around, and I'm just like, this dog is adorable. And like everybody else is asking for all the Italian media, like losing their minds. And I'm just like, is anybody else seeing this? This dog is, and then he curls up in her lap and falls asleep as all of this chaos has happened. I'm like, this dog is incredible.
Leo's living the best life ever, truly.
Is.
Like, my Instagram DMs are 90% my daughter Simone sending me DMs of Leo.
Good.
Because she'll just like scroll through IG and like find Leo DMs. Like that wedding picture of them on the balcony might be the greatest wedding photo ever. Like, how do you top that? You're on the balcony overlooking like the ocean, and then there's Leo.
It's so
resplendent. Like, it's just perfect. And so, yeah, I mean, Leo's living a great life. I'm living a pretty good life. It's not Leo's life. I'm not on a yacht like Leo is. But, yeah, look, I mean, I'm very lucky I get to do what I do. That's partly why I will wake up at 7 a.m. and work until midnight on a Saturday when it's 70 degrees and sunny out here, because I want to keep doing it as long as I can.
For sure. For sure. And I think recently we've seen some genuinely fantastic moments in sports. We've had everything from, it was Arsenal winning the Premier League after like 22 years of nothing, the Knicks getting the NBA title in 53 years, Lewis Hamilton's first race win in Ferrari, the first time that Ferrari's won in like 2 years. Everyone is talking about championship back on. I wanted to ask you, we've had so many of these groundbreaking moments, achievements in sports. Do you think they're like, can you speak on these moments for these legacy teams and what they've been able to achieve like most recently?
Yeah, I mean, look, I am a Celtics fan, but
sorry.
Fair enough,
Boston. Hard,
yeah.
It was hard not to get swept up into what was happening in New York. Like, I have friends that live in New York. Like, when you see throngs of people sitting in Empire State of Mind, like, tell me sports don't matter. Look at that and tell me that sports can't make a difference. Mm-hmm. Like, I was telling, the second Lewis joined Ferrari, I said, look, that wood at Monza is going to hit so hard when it happens. And I still think that could very much happen. But Lewis won it in Barcelona, where Schumacher won his first Ferrari race. And Lewis winning, he had the pace to win. Like, the virtual safety car, I think he was still probably going to win that race. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But let's not overlook the fact that Ferrari got the strategy right. Like, we need to remember that aspect to it as well. Like, every Ferrari fan watching that was like, they're going to blow this somehow. Like, he's got the pace. Like you saw when, you know, his second pit stop comes out, he's 22 seconds behind Russell. Then it's 20, then it's 15, then it's 13, then it's 11. And he's cutting it down, like cut it in half in just a handful of laps. You're like, okay, how are they going to screw it up? They didn't. And I think it's one of the hardest things about this job and about sort of the sports content creation, but I think it's something that you have to tap into when you have to, is the fandom part, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're supposed to be unbiased. We're supposed to be neutral. Lewis when he won at Silverstone, look, I had tears in my eyes. Yeah. Like, and I had to write about it, but I did. And I was open about it. Because, like, look, how could you not sort of be emotional? You see 58 years since the Knicks have won a title. Like, how could you not be emotional about that? You know, and you look at Arsenal, you look at these other great moments. How could you not sort of be honest and human in those moments and sort of at least mention it, at least tap into it a little bit. You start thinking about other teams, other franchises, it's something we're talking about at SB Nation right now. Like, what's it going to be like if the Bills win a Super Bowl, or if the Cleveland Guardians, that franchise hasn't won a World Series since the 40s, the Detroit Lions, like what it means to people. I mean, and now, look, as I mentioned at the start, like we had Red Sox season tickets in my family. My grandfather, I've got his medals over there. He stormed the beaches in Omaha in World War II. He came home after World War II. He got a job, got married, bought a house, and got Red Sox season tickets in 1946. Those were in my family until the 90s.
Wow.
And when the Red Sox were in the seventh inning of Game 4 in 2004, when they were about to close out their first World Series in 86 years, my wife and I were at a bar in downtown D.C., and I turned to her and said, "We got to go home." She's like, "Why? Don't you want to be out for a bar?" "No, I got to be on the phone with my grandfather." And so I was on the phone with my grandfather for the final out. And I've written about that moment because, look, the world is hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are moments that sport bring the best out in us. You look at Knicks fans celebrating. You look at Red Sox fans celebrating. You look at Argentina, the streets of Argentina in Buenos Aires when Messi finally won the cup. Like, that's stuff that people will tell their kids, their grandkids. That's stuff that will last beyond all of us. And so when you get to see moments like that, when you get to see that Lewis win at Monza this fall, which I'm telling you is happening.
It's happening.
Like, you're going to want to tell people about that. You're going to want to tell your grandkids about that. And so, there are things that sports, bring out sometimes that are negative, whatever. But sports also have that ability to tap into the best of us. And when you get to see moments like that, it makes me, again, incredibly lucky to be able to tell the story about it. I will say, like, around lap 22, I was writing like, "Hey, George finally got his win." And then I had to hit reverse on that story pretty quickly, but I was I wasn't going to ignore the Lewis win story. And so, but yeah, it's great when you see moments like that transcend the fandom. Again, I'm a Boston fan. I'm a Boston Celtics fan, but couldn't help but be happy for the Knicks and be happy for New York fans because they've been waiting decades for this.
Mm-hmm.
They've been waiting so long for that. And, it was great to see, and that, the parade on Thursday is going to be an incredible event.
It's going to be absolutely nuts. And, that's something that I know I can relate to personally. And I think Misha we can just all relate to. I remember where I was when the Raptors won in 2019. I was outside. Even more recently last year with the Blue Jays making it as far as they did. I don't even watch baseball like that, but I was up until 3 a.m. So these are the moments that truly bring us together, and kind of just on the whole Lewis Hamilton topic, because I did say we were going to come back to it at the very beginning. Yep. So we saw that Lewis Hamilton won with Ferrari this past weekend. And as of the time that we're recording this, Lewis Hamilton is now 41 points behind Antonelli in the championship, who is the championship leader. He's also 9 points ahead of George, and he's 40 points ahead of Charles, who is now 31 points behind George. Is there a title fight between Mercedes and Ferrari going on? Is it well and truly on between those two teams?
Again, we're recording this. We just had the win in Barcelona. We got a little bit of a break here in the F1 calendar to catch our breath, which I think we all sort of need. Sitting here right now, we 100% have a title fight. Hands down. Every fiber of my being believes that. Not just Lewis for the drivers, but I think Ferrari might climb back into a constructors as well. Because, look, it was the worst kept secret in the paddock all last year. I remember George's media session in Austin last year on Thursday, sitting in the hospitality space. They had just did the deal. He was coming back. Kimi was coming back. And it was clear why that was happening. It was because they thought they were going to have the best car. And George basically said, "Look, this is where I can win a championship." There was every expectation that they were going to start on the front foot. They were going to have the best power unit. They were going to have the best car. And for the first couple of races, that was true. But what we've seen in these last 2 races are reliability issues. First George's has a failure, Kimi has a failure. But what we've also seen is, yes, Ferrari got the strategy right in Barcelona. Their upgrades have worked.
Yeah.
Like, their upgrade packages have worked, which is not what we've seen from them. Like, you remember 24, right? They had the big upgrade package at the end of the season, trying to catch McLaren, and it didn't work. They got it right. And so, Mercedes started on the front foot. They got it right to start the year. But all these teams knew that, like, it was going to be a process. You weren't just getting one shot. Even the teams like Alpine that, look, a year ago, they punted on last season.
Yeah.
They basically said, look, 26 or nothing, right? And they seem to have gotten it right. For the most part, they're certainly doing better than they were last year. Oh, it's hard to do worse. That was an absolute tractor.
Yeah.
But look, they're getting double points finishes. They're having a really good year. You got the Gasly podium reinstated. But I do think that Ferrari has caught up. Lewis is probably going to win that race on pace.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. And again, like you said, reliability, Kimi really could just take it and run. But again, Kimi and track limits are like best friends right now.
And we're still talking about a teenager.
Yeah.
Look, and he's incredibly impressive to talk to. Like, he's so, he's brilliant. I think he's going to be a star in this sport for a very long time. But he's still, look, last year was about learning how to drive in F1. Now he's having to learn how to fight Lewis Hamilton and fight Lando Norris and fight Max Verstappen. And this is something also that I come to in all lines of sport. Like, he's having to do that while navigating life as an adult. Like, where were you when you were 19? I couldn't drive to the grocery store, let alone like turn laps against Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen in a, rocket ship at 242 miles an hour. Like, so the fact that he is fighting with giants in this sport and beating them right now is a huge credit to him, his family, his team, and everybody around him. What will that look like as we get into the summer? What will that look like in the fall? What will that look like when, if Red Bull figures it out? Apparently they have the most powerful power unit. Hey, that's interesting.
That's what I heard.
Because look what Max did last year. I mean, over the course of 1 week in Texas, I remember Thursday, he was like, no, I'm not getting back into the title races. No way. Sunday after that race, fight's on. Okay. Like, that's how quickly this sport can change. But Kimi's having to fight these guys as a teenager. So
and he's
you have
doing
to keep that in mind
great
too.
Job at it, like you said. So to kind of round off our Formula One question, and then we have one more question after this one for you. Kind of just adding on to that, like you said, this sport it can change in the blink of an eye. And right now we know that Charles is struggling. He's not having the best time adjusting to this car, it seems. What are your thoughts on, I guess, this dynamic shift that's kind of happening? As we know, like, if this championship is well and truly on, and if Lewis is still leading, what do you think that means for Charles? Because he did just sign on until 2030 with Ferrari, which he's going to be fine. But like, I'm just curious.
He's going to be fine.
Yeah.
He's the face of Ferrari.
Exactly.
Like, look, Lewis, you have a chance to sign Lewis Hamilton. You're going to do it. It doesn't matter what team you are. But look, Lewis is in my age bracket. Like, he's not going to be driving forever. Charles will be there longer. He is beloved by the Tifosi. He is the face of Ferrari. Even if Lewis wins the drivers this year, Charles is still the face of Ferrari.
Yeah.
I think something we have to remember, and this is sort of something we saw last year, and this is something I was wondering about coming into this year, the muscle memory factor of being an athlete. When you have to learn new things, it's sometimes hard to unlearn what you used to do, right? Yeah. On the football side of things, we talk about the quarterback's throwing motion, right? And sometimes when we get to the NFL draft, it's like, oh, this quarterback has a really long throwing motion. He'll have to tighten that up and make it quicker if he's going to be good in the NFL. Well, as somebody that threw a football my whole life, it's hard to unlearn what you've been doing in the 12 years prior to that moment, right? And you could practice it as much as you want. But then when you get those big guys trying to put you in the hospital, like I talked about earlier, muscle memory kicks in, and it's the same thing inside the F1 car. Lewis talked about it last year, right? The steering wheel, everything's a little bit different. And when you've been doing things as an athlete at 250 miles an hour, one way for 13 years, and suddenly you have to do it a little bit differently, it can be hard. And I think a lot of these drivers, and this is, again, something I was wondering about coming into the year, with the energy harvesting and the braking and all that stuff, how are they going to adapt to it? Mm-hmm. Some have found it easier. Some might be struggling with it a little bit. And you add in the brake issues that Charles has been dealing with and he's been talking about, and they tried to fix that this week and it didn't quite work.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of moving parts, literally and figuratively. It might just take a little bit more time for him to adjust. But he's one of the 22 best drivers in the world.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing happened. Misha and I talked about this extensively. That's literally what we said about Lewis last year.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't expect Lewis to go into Ferrari and he was just going to win championships. I was like, he's been with Mercedes his entire racing career. He's always raced with the Mercedes engine. And now.
I mean, look, to use the sort of everybody drives Zach Brown analogy from earlier, right? When you get a rental, you drive out of the airport and suddenly you have to slam on the brakes and switch gears or something. You're reaching for your old car, right? Mm-hmm. You're not reaching for the one you're already in, and you're doing it at 50 miles an hour. Imagine doing it at 250.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's a really, really good point. I think F1 is sometimes, or the F1 fandom is sometimes a little quick to react, especially when it comes to these kind of moments of struggling for drivers.
That's unfortunately the era we live in, right?
For sure. And I think kind of in that same line of thinking, like, let's maybe take a step back. I wanted to end the show off by asking the type of question that we always finish our show with, and it's a two-sided question. I'm going to do this with NFL because I think that's what you have the most experience and the most kind of personal connection to. But in your opinion, what is one thing that you think the NFL can learn from F1 and that F1 can learn from the NFL?
Yeah, I could talk for another hour on this one. Something I think the NFL could learn from F1, tap into the fans more. Like the NFL is spoiled because here in the States, the NFL is king. We are talking about a sport that in the middle of May will release its schedule, okay? The NFL has a schedule formula. When the season ends, we know what teams are playing who the next year because of the way the schedule works. But the NFL knows that everything it does, people will write about and talk about. They will release the actual list of games in the schedule in May, and it will get a week's worth of coverage. And it will dominate ESPN. Like, I had to write about, 7 best revenge games, whatever. But they sometimes ignore the people that really drive the conversation, the content creators, the people that are out there creating YouTube videos and breakdowns. F1 does a very good job at that. F1, like, you see people that are doing stuff on Instagram, that are on Threads, and they're in a garage, or they're being brought to races. Because they know that in this modern era, like a TV commercial about, hey, this is the big game we got coming up this weekend, the AFC Championship game at 3 p.m. on CBS, that's not moving the needle. But a bunch of people on Instagram in a garage, that moves the needle. And so I think the NFL could learn from the voice of the fans more. The F1 world needs to do some of what the NFL does. Find a way to stay in the conversation year round. Mm-hmm. Like, and I've written about this before, and I think you might see a little bit more of this, between Drive to Survive. Again, we've seen that for a while now, but, the F175 live event, team launch thing, other ways to get people to pay attention to F1 beyond, say, February to November, right? I know it's just a couple of months, and I know they get the holiday break and stuff like that, but even on summer shutdown times, even on non-race weeks, find a way to stay in the conversation that isn't just driver transfer market.
Yeah, I agree with that because it's true. Once like the season's done, like for us regular fans who are always watching, we know what's going on. But for like my casual fans, they don't really know, they're like, okay, well, it's done, moving on. And it's like, you really want to keep, and it's so funny because I was talking to someone about how like a lot of people are fans of different series. And like in this current era of Formula One right now, you're seeing a lot of at least, younger fans who are turning into hockey a lot right now because of all the TV shows that are out regarding hockey. And I'm seeing like the interconnection with Formula One and hockey. And I'm just like, hockey is a major player of sport. And if you're losing your fan base to hockey, that's tough.
Yeah. I mean, F1 from a sort of like that media side, content creation side, like I think they're starting to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I think by tapping into content creators and things like that, it's helping. Mm-hmm. But the next step is to not just do it during race weeks, but find a way to, and I think they could also do more with like show runs and things like that, where they need to be advertised more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Mark, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you guys.
Was truly such a pleasure speaking with you, and for me meeting you. I know I had a great time. I know that Misha did too. And we hope that you did. Absolutely. Oh, perfect. Good.
I absolutely did.
I'm happy to hear. Before we let you go, can you just please let our audience know where they can find you?
Well, SBNation.com is probably the easiest. I always forget like what my names are on like threads. It's like MASCO030916 on threads, and it's like Mark Schofield Boosky whatever.
We'll link it. We'll find it and link it.
We'll link them. Don't worry.
And I will sort of tease. We've got some fun things we're going to be rolling out later this summer at SB Nation, including some fun F1 stuff. There's actually going to be some new things coming down the F1 pike at SB Nation, which I was just found out about today and going to be talking more about on the back end tomorrow. And so I'm very excited about that. But yeah, SBNation.com. Guys, this was an absolute blast. I could do this for another couple of hours. So if you guys want to do it again at any point, you know where to find me.
We will hit you up.
Absolutely.
No, thank you so much again, truly.
Thank you, guys.
This has been the Hold the Pass podcast. I've been your host, Fatima.
And I've been your host, Misha.
And we had such a wonderful time with Mark today, and we hope that you did too. If you like this episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to share as well. You can find us at Hold the Pass Pod on Instagram and TikTok, and anywhere you listen to your podcast from. You can also reach out to us at holdthepasspodcast@gmail.com should you have any requests, questions, or you just want to share a story. Thank you all so much for sitting here and watching this. And if you're on audio, thank you so much for sitting here and listening to this. And we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.